Hey everyone, welcome to the Darshan Talks live stream. I'm your host, Darshan Kulkarni. It's my mission to help you trust the products you depend on. For some reason, last week was a little busy, and we didn't manage to catch up. But I'm hoping that this week is different and it's better, and I get to talk to you guys again. As you know, I'm an attorney, I'm a pharmacist, and I advise companies with FDA regulated products. So if you think about drugs, wonder about devices, obsess over pharmacy, this is the live stream for you. Do have to specify I am a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. I am a pharmacist, but I'm not your pharmacist. So this is neither legal advice nor clinical advice. My expert today is a technological guru, but he's not your technological guru. So if you really want his advice, you probably need to hire him. And let's be honest, guy's too smart. So it's good to have him on, and I get to learn from him, which is awesome. I do these live streams because they're a lot of fun, and I find myself learning something new every single time. It'd be great to know someone's listening. So if you like what you hear, please leave a comment, please subscribe. If you want to ask our guest questions, please feel free to do so. But after the talk, please also feel free to share the video itself. So I do also have to specify that these are considerations. They don't necessarily reflect the opinions of my host, or of the host, or my guests or their employers. But if you want to find me, please reach out to me on Twitter at Darshan Talks, or just go to our website at darshantalks.com. Today's live stream is really, really exciting because we're going to be talking hopefully a little bit about open innovation. What does that mean? What are the implications of that? Um, our guest today is the VP of Digital Innovation. He's been at United Therapeutics for 21 years. It's a biopharma company. He's a 35-year information technology veteran focused on developing new pharma products and leveraging technology. Our guest for today, Shola Oyewole. Did I pronounce that right? I never get the last name right, and I doubt I expect I butchered that.
Yeah, you did. You got it right.
Who knew? Who knew? I'll take it. It's good to see you, Shola. How are you?
Good to see you too, Darshan. Thank you for inviting me today.
So Shola, we got to start from the beginning. Um, you used the term right before we started about this term open innovation. Um, is that the same thing as open source?
It could be. It depends on the context of the company running this. In my case, I'd like to call it more like crowdsourcing because essentially what I'm doing is I'm seeking ideas from the employees of the company during this open innovation event. No, it kind of like I said, it depends on the context. In a different context, say maybe in the race for a cure or the race to create some kind of software, that could be different. It could be called, open source or whatever term you like to call it. But I think at the end of the
So
day,
so
open
yes.
source.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that those terms can have similar meanings, but not necessarily. Open source, at least the way I've always interpreted, is intended for everyone to use and enjoy, and build on. While open innovation is for everyone to contribute towards. And in the case of the project you're running, for example, and I'm going to ask you about that in a few seconds, you're actually seeing it as a crowdsourcing mechanism where people can come in, give their ideas, hopefully build a better mousetrap, for lack of a better term. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's a more accurate description of what we are doing here. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you're doing, because it's something I've seen done before, and and I've always thought it's an interesting idea, and I want to play it out a little bit more. So tell us what you guys are doing at United Therapeutics.
So United Therapeutics as a company, we make drugs for a very rare disease called pulmonary hypertension. We have a portfolio of drugs that help manage that disease. In addition to that, we are at the forefront of organ manufacturing
Hmm.
because the true cure for this disease, pulmonary hypertension, is a lung transplant. And as you might know, there are roughly 200,000 patients waiting in line for a lung transplant today. Unfortunately, only 2,000 of those patients are fortunate enough to get a successful lung transplant. We recognize this as a company, and we're working very hard to be able to manufacture lungs to make these lungs more available, more accessible to these patients. So that is what we're doing as a company today.
So you're doing that as a company. Now, how does this tie into how this open innovation program is going to function?
Well, the open innovation, we call it the big idea at United Therapeutics. It's not only focused on drug development, it covers everything: quality of life of the employees, ideas that think of it as a more interactive, more sophisticated suggestion box.
Huh.
Remember the old days of suggestion boxes? They're always in a corner somewhere, filled with dust. Nobody ever opens them. Well, think of suggestion box 2.0, where you open this up to the whole company. It's an internal event only. And what we're doing is we're encouraging people from every department, every seniority level or lack of seniority level. We're encouraging them to contribute ideas that can help the company, help our patients, help the business, help themselves. So you have a wide slew of ideas, from maybe even um, growing our own garden here for vegetables that we can serve at a cafeteria, to things as high as, genetically modifying a pig as a source of organs. So we have a wide gamut of ideas. This will be the second time we're running it. We ran this event 1 year ago, and it was resoundingly very, very, very successful. We actually had a Shark Tank event to help select the finalists of the Open Innovation event. We did all this virtually, and all 900 employees were invited, and participation was very, very high.
So you talked about it being a very successful event. How do you define success?
So, success is when your end result is getting a product or an idea that the company can work on or work with.
Okay.
That's the
So
measure of success.
now in this case, you talked about a pretty wide range. You talked about growing a garden to growing pigs that can have human organs effectively, and therefore help with transplantation a little bit. So obviously, there's a much different level of investment required for a garden versus genetically modifying pigs. My question for you is there any kind of pharmacoeconomic thought process, or at least a economic thought process, on what constitutes success? I mean, I'll give you an example. If someone came to you and said, you know what we should do? We should have our own space station and grow cells on there. Theoretically, that's something I know people are doing. But is that within the range of what United Therapeutics is thinking? Is that the goal? Financially, that may or may not, I have no idea, may or may not be appropriate, but it may be, it would fit your definition of potential success. But I imagine that there are some meets and bounds. So how do you, as VP of innovation, basically decide what is successful and what is something you want to pursue?
Well, that example you gave is not out of bounds. It is possible. It's going to
Yeah.
win, right? And if it wins, the reward, the winning prize gives you, the ideator, right, money to develop a proof of concept.
Hmm.
Your proof of concept will be used by you and your team to develop data supporting this idea. We're not giving you money to go build this thing in outer space. We're saying, okay, you won. This was a great idea. You won, but
Sure.
here's money for you to go develop the proof of concept. You come back with data, you come back with your proof of concept, and then the business decides if this is something they want to pursue, they want to license out, they want to patent. It depends.
So,
But for you to get to that stage, that to me, right, is a metric of success. But the most successful part is actually the employees, right, participating and having their ideas seriously vetted.
so I have a question, but before that, I have Dr. Janan Sarwar asking a question. This is very intriguing. How was the Shark Tank set up virtually?
Using Zoom. So we had all the employees dial in, and we had our sharks who comprise the sharks comprise senior leaders in the company as well as board members. They're geographically distributed, and we had a split window. We had all of them being visible by all employees, and every person that presented the idea had a window, and the sharks would ask questions and score them. So it was probably no different from what we are doing right now. You have the two of us talking interactively. Well, we had five sharks and one presenter. So there's six people talking interactively and broadcasting to about 600 people at the same time.
So many questions for me. So my first question is, if I was an employee, what do I win?
You do not win anything personally. Your idea gets funded. So look
Okay.
at it as my department gives you, right, a necessary amount of money for you to develop a prototype of your winning idea. You
Okay.
personally don't win anything, but of course you get recognition, the awards that we give out, the shout outs, there's a video montage we're going to circulate with your face in it about your ideas and everything. There's all of that, but you don't like pocket anything. What you get
So
is
obvious. Mhm.
recognition.
So obviously you are you considered the idea of giving someone money, and then you said, I don't want to go down that path. What made you think through that? How did you make that critical decision of, I we think that giving money or giving something like that is not the right message to send? So can you talk a little bit about that thought process from a leadership standpoint?
Well, remember, we're employees of a company, and everything we develop here belongs to the company. What
Yeah.
benefit does it give you or I if you pocketed some money and walked away? How about the idea? Someone's going to develop it. It was your idea, right? You need money to develop it, don't you? I would think, right, it is more important for you that your idea be developed to help patients, to help employees, to help the business, than for you to
Yeah.
pocket it and walk away into the sunset. So, with that, in mind, these ideas belong to United Therapeutics, and the funding is to help you, the winner, develop a prototype that you can present to leadership and say, okay, this is my prototype. This is data I have collected over a period of time to see if this is a good business idea or not. At that point, the business then regards it and says, okay, how does that fit with our portfolio? How does that fit with our business goals? And then they decide to take it on or not.
Which is really interesting to me. It's an interesting model, um, because I've seen different variations of this done by different people, and including open innovation versus not. We'll talk about that in a second, but let me talk a little bit about this idea that if if you come up with the idea, you get the money to pursue the idea, get a proof of concept, if you will. So my question for you is, if you're developing this proof of concept, um, how do I, as the person with the idea, avoid feeling like what I got instead was just more work? Like, do you actually help them go, you now get it? Like Google, I remember, was the famous thing you did with Google was you get 20% of your time to spend on innovation. I don't know if they do that still. I have a feeling, if I read somewhere, they got rid of it at some point. But is that the idea, that you get to decrease the amount of work you do and you add on this other project that you get to spend time on? or is it an additional 20% of work?
That's a very good question. When your idea wins this prize money, you, the ideator, can decide on what you'd like to do. You can outsource the prototype and data collection to a trusted consultant, CRO, or whomever you think would be the most appropriate. And don't forget, you might have a winning idea that you might not have expertise in, but may have to be handled by a different department. The whole point of that funding is for you to help alleviate that department's workload by using some of that funding to outsource or near source the development of the prototype. It
So,
doesn't, so yes, technically for in some cases, yes. If you're the ideator and you want to work on the prototype yourself, right, then it means that there's more work for you. But we've never been shy of work in this company. The work ethic for any Unitarian it is something you've got to just marvel at. And I've seen cases where people have just taken on these ideas, developed the proofs of concept themselves, developed businesses as a part of their responsibilities.
so when you talk about the type of people where you're talking about people working extremely hard, noticed more, could you talk a little bit about the successes people have had in terms of, okay, they were part of this idea, they came up with the concept, or maybe they executed on the idea. Based on last year, and I recognize you've only had 1 year of success so far to look at, but have people been noticed so that they had a better career trajectory because of it? Could you talk a little bit more about the successes that came out of it?
Well, I can't talk specifically about the career trajectory since clearly
Yeah,
we only had one event, but I can
right.
say I can talk about the two ideas are one. The goal
Okay.
was to get one winning idea, but we had two
Yeah.
winning ideas, two very compelling ideas. The one idea was developed. It was so low tech, very easy to do. We deployed it as a small business.
Hmm.
The ideator has obviously received recognition within her team and also throughout the whole company for such an idea. On the other side, the second idea was a device, a medical device. And it was thought about, developed by groups of people that belong to different departments. So the point I'm trying to make is, as a part of this crowdsourcing, you're getting groups that probably never needed to work closer together. They are working closer together to come up with an idea or a solution to a problem. Okay? That synergy is so important, particularly during COVID when we're all physically distributed from the company. So you see this transatlantic,
Hmm.
interdepartmental, cross-pollination of people coming together, developing things. To me, I think that is a huge success metric here because you're having employees work coming out of their silos, working together. Number one, you're having them also getting company-wide recognition. And for those that win, you're even giving them an experience that some of them never had before. It is one thing to have an idea, it is another thing to have your idea win, but then it is another thing to have your winning idea get developed into a business through a prototype. It's not a job for one person. We had to interface with multiple departments, you know, um, clinical, quality, R&D, seeking their advice, business development, finance. So it has been a great learning experience, not just for myself, but for the participants.
That's amazing. That's really, really interesting. So you talked about this idea of, one of the ideas that you said was a small business. The second one was a medical device. Let's talk first about the small business, because that's interesting by itself. When you talk about this small business, did they create a subsidiary of United Therapeutics, and now this company runs on its own, or was it just a proof of concept, or is it too early yet to know?
So what really it was an accessory that we felt could help manage the discomfort some of our patients experience. A very
Okay.
inexpensive accessory, and we made that available. We set up third parties that could, help redeem, help ship that to our patients if they were interested in that product. Um, that's why I call it very, very low tech, but the impact it had on the patient was an improvement quality of life. It shows how much we care about their comfort. I'd call that a small add-on business, and it is something we're going to try out, collect data, like I told you, and see if there's something people would use, people would find any value in, and if they do, then we'll just continue doing it. It was very, very, very inexpensive, but I believe from a patient perspective, impactful. And for the other, more complex medical devices, they tend to be very, very complex. We're filing a patent for the idea right now for the device. We have a prototype we're working with, and we're collecting usability data on this device. And at the end of the data collection, we're going to compare it and say, okay, does it do what this team believes it will do? If the answer is yes, then the business will decide, okay, is this something I want to develop or out license?
So it's really interesting. I want to go back to the small business, talk a little bit more about it before we jump into the medical device part. Specifically, in this case of the small business, one of the key things you mentioned there was this idea of what is the impact on the patient, which I think is such a critical, important consideration. Now, do you determine impact on the patient based on patient feedback, or do you base that on sales? Or is it both? And how do you bring in patient advocates? Like, how do you incorporate that patient voice? How do you collect that data?
That's a very good question. Since we have just deployed this as a proof of concept, our plan over time is to collect data
Right.
of usability. So there's one thing to make the accessories available, see if there's interest in the accessories, and then capture feedback at a later point in time. All that will be part of the data collection.
Okay. So initially, a success measure, an interim success point, would be actually getting patient feedback on usability, like you said, and the interest level. Obviously, commercial success will be based on what you find in the interim levels. Is that fair?
I'd say commercial success will be based on how patients feel about this product. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that you can tie sale of drug to this product. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say self-drug? Okay, yeah, I didn't mean that.
The point we're trying to do is we're trying to make you more comfortable as a patient. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
there's this accessory that costs next to nothing. Does it make things better for you? Yes, no. You know, that kind of
Yeah.
data collection.
Very, very cool. And then you've got the medical device where you're still collecting usability. Now, United Therapeutics, when I think of you guys, you're more of a you said you have a drug for pulmonary hypertension, so you're more of a drug company. Is it a big pivot to be thinking about medical devices suddenly?
We're a drug company. We also have devices.
Oh, I didn't realize that there was a whole device.
We have pumps.
Oh,
We have an
okay, I'm
EVLP
wrong.
center where we process lungs before transplant. So
Okay.
it is not a pivot. This will be a natural part of our interest if we decide on pursuing this. As you know, we're still doing data collection, so
Of course.
undetermined. But yeah, this is a part of what we could do.
So when is the big event? When is the big idea?
Last quarter of the year, in the next month or so, we'll open up the portal for ideas. We'll run it for a few weeks. We'll have a selection committee pick out from all the ideas, pick out maybe about the five best ideas, and we'll have sharks that will sit back and interview or get presentations live from the five winners. And based on that, the judges will pick one winner or maybe more again this year.
So how do you pick the judges? I mean, obviously there are people higher up in the company, but does it need to be people higher up in the company? How do you decide who should be a judge?
Okay, that's a good question. Um, because the ideas that are coming from employees would include a wide gamut of business ideas, R&D ideas, and quality of living ideas. I ensure that our members of the shops have authority and knowledge in those pillars, right? Does that make sense? So I'm going to have somebody that leads R&D. I'm going to have someone that leads our business. I'm going to have someone that leads our, strategy as a company. I'm going to have board members that have vast experience in innovation, you know. So they're carefully selected in that sense. That way,
So,
you have experts that are reviewing the wide category of ideas that we submitted.
which I think is fascinating because you're what you sort of mentioned is you're having your sharks, for lack of a better term, be representative of the of people with the authority to make the change. Is that a fair description?
I would say with the knowledge to make the change, with the knowledge
Okay.
to choose one idea over another.
Okay. It's an important distinction because of the question I was going to ask after that. The reason I asked the question is, has there been any thought to go next year? Maybe we'd like to have someone who's a regular employee because they can speak to quality of life as an employee in a way that, say, a board member cannot.
That's a good
And
question. Go ahead,
yeah,
sir.
no, that was my question. Like, is that something you think about, or do you think that employees, they may not have the context to look at the other issues that are the other choices and evaluate them just as fairly?
So remember the sharks, that's the last stage of the idea
Okay.
collection. In between, there'll be a large committee, and the members of the
Ah,
committee, they're more vast. They cover all ranks of the company, different skill sets, different exposures. They
yeah.
first take a look at all the ideas, they rank those ideas. They're the ones that come up with the final five.
Ah.
The sharks now review the final five through presentations, and based on the presentations and based on any data those presenters have at that time, the sharks make a decision to choose one.
So I'm going to give you a piece of unsolicited advice, just so you know. Uh,
Sure.
completely unsolicited. But now I'm kind of like excited about what you're doing. It seems like so much fun. Have you considered maybe in the future, maybe not this year because it's a little late, but maybe next year, the year after, to include past winners on your on your Shark Tank? So because they know what it takes to take a product through the proof of concept.
I like that idea. So hold on. Make them a shark or make them a part of the selection committee?
I'm saying from both a employee morale boosting perspective and from a visibility perspective, which is one of the key things they get out of this, make them a shark.
I like the idea. I like the idea actually.
I just thought it's interesting.
I like the unsolicited advice, and I will consider it very seriously. I like the idea. I think, yeah, I like the idea. The thing is, this is a lot of work,
Of course.
particularly acting as a shark. There's so many ideas they have to go through, even the members of the committee. I want to be very mindful about overburdening people who are already so busy. Last quarter of the year, you can imagine. But it is something I'll seriously consider. Thank
As you
you.
said, the United Therapeutics people apparently are not afraid of hard work. So there you go. Uh, but this was wonderful, and thank you for taking the time to come on and talk a little bit about the show. This was such a great conversation. I've seen these types of crowdsourcing ideas done. I've actually participated in one in a university, and one of the big problems I had with that was there was no conversation about who owns the idea that wins, and that was kind of problematic for me. And it's a great concept. It's just since some of that information was unclear, it made me feel have a little bit more trepidation. So I love the fact that in the case of the event you're conducting, in the case of the big idea, it's very clear. You work for the company. The company owns the idea, but we get to play it out, see what happens, see if we can explore it. So it sounds like a great concept, and I'm very excited to have you come back and talk a little bit more about how it went and what the lessons were. So would you be open to doing that, by the way?
Yes, I should have some to tell you sometime next year after
That
it.
sounds good.
Yeah, I'll be happy to give you feedback.
Do you mind if we ask you the 4 questions we usually ask?
Um, Please go ahead. I don't remember what they are, but go ahead.
Of course. Based on what we discussed, what would you like to ask the audience?
I guess my question to your audience would be: have they run an open innovation event, and if not, would this be something they'd be interested in doing, and why?
So I'll answer the question. I've never run one, but I've participated in one, like I said. And I think it's a great idea because I think, to your point you made a few minutes ago, um, the suggestion box is in the corner gathering dust, and it doesn't get the respect it deserves. And what you've done is talk a little bit about employee morale and try to bring their voice to the table. And I think that it's a great idea. Now, I think that the problem only you can answer because you've done this is how much effort that takes. It sounds like it's a very heavy lift, but it sounds like a lot of fun. So I think it's something that, as a participant, I love the idea behind it. So that's my answer. Um, my next question: what is something you learned in the last month?
What did I learn in the last month? Um, I was gonna say octopuses have three hearts, but I think I
Do
learned.
they?
Yeah, you didn't
Huh?
know that, right?
I did not know that. Well, I wonder what they do with the other two.
Well, so one heart controls four legs on the left side, another heart
Huh?
controls four legs on the right side, and then one heart just kind of coordinates everything, everything else. Who knew?
Fascinating.
Next time you're eating a calamari, imagine what was sacrificed for that delicious
Right?
thing. Yeah.
Huh? That is really interesting. That
My
is really,
daughter
really
taught me
interesting.
that, by the way.
I love it. I love that. These are the kinds of things you never quite learn. Little bits of trivia. Um, what is something that made you happy in the last week?
What made me happy in the last week? Oh yeah, my son relocated from California, and he got his first
Oh,
house in DC. So we're super proud of him. We're super proud of that achievement. So that made me very, very happy. It's closest to
Shola, I have
home.
to say, you look like a very young man, so I'm very concerned that you have a son who's old enough to have his own place. So lucky you. Uh,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And the last question I have is something we've been sort of showing out throughout, but how can people reach you?
You can reach me by email on LinkedIn. My email address is simple. It's shola@unither.com. And you could also find me on LinkedIn by searching for my name, Shola Oyewole. My last name is spelled Oyewole. First name Shole. I'm very accessible.
Very, very cool. Shola, this was wonderful having you on. Thank you again for being on, talking to us. This was a lot of fun. Thanks again.
I was honored. Thank you for the invitation, Darshan. Speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon.